Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the September 12th regular school board meeting to order, and we're going to start with a roll call.
Charles Black-Lance.
Here.
Kevin Boyles.
Here.
Tom Hagelin.
Here.
Ruth Nelson.
Here.
Sarah Spear.
Here.
All present.
Wonderful. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as usual, this meeting is being held in accordance with Minnesota Statutes 13D.02. It may be monitored from a remote location by watching YouTube Live, and it is being recorded and will be on the district's website in short order. We'll start with the approval of the agenda as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
First from Director Spear, a second from Director Hagelin. Any discussion?
I'd like to add, Kevin will be doing the equity task force
Okay.
update.
Good. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. And we're going to start off right away. It's kind of an exciting night, hearing from our school board candidates for the two-year seats that'll begin serving in December already, or until December 31st, 2024, but we'll start this coming December. So we'll go in the order they're listed here. Anthony Bonsante. And you have like 2 minutes or so, just a brief introduction. You can come right up here.
Anthony Bonsante.
You can come right up here.
I have a waters for you too.
Right here?
If you guys want? Yeah. Yep. If you get thirsty.
No, I'm good.
Thanks, Janet.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's Anthony Bonsante, 52 years old, originally from Crosby, Ironton, Minnesota. Been in Brainerd for about 5 years now. I've served on 2 other school boards in Crosby, Minnesota and Shakopee, Minnesota, which is about equivalent size of Brainerd. I've been on curriculum committees, building committees, and negotiation committees. I was in the group involved in hiring the superintendent at Shakopee. Before I left, unfortunately now he's serving prison time because he embezzled. And I'll be happy to say I was the only board member not to approve his contract. We had to release a principal while I was there for cooking the books a little bit as well. So I'm no stranger to conflict. I want to serve on the school board simply because I care about students. I've had 2 kids. In fact, my daughter's here right now, Brittany. My future wife is here, Christy. I live in the Brainerd School District. I live over by Riverside Drive. Unfortunately not on the lake, but whatever. But I want to serve to help our community, our taxpayers, and our students. I believe we as a school board need to build a healthy environment for our students that want to come back to Brainerd School District, because we lost about 400 to 600 kids last year due to events I don't even care to talk about right now. But we as a board and a community need to come together with our staff and our teachers and everyone to build an environment worthy of having these students come back. And if there's any other questions, I'll feel free to answer them from the board, but that's my gig.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Michelle Brecken.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Brecken, and I have lived in the Brainerd School District since 1984. My husband, Bob, and I have raised 5 children, all who attended the Brainerd schools. They were all very active in extracurricular activities, athletics, fine arts, community service organizations, and student government. In our spare time, Bob and I enjoy all the Brainerd Lakes area has to offer. We especially appreciate our 5 grandchildren and are pretty fond of our dog, Rosie. For 32 years, I was a school social worker in 2 area schools. For 20 years, I was in the Crosby School District in a K-6 building, and for the next 12 years, I was in Little Falls in a 6-8 building. I am currently licensed as a school social worker with the Minnesota Department of Education, and I am a licensed social worker with the Minnesota Board of Social Work. During my public school tenure, I had the privilege of working on a variety of committees. I served on the student assistance team, the child study team, the district staff development team, the behavior intervention team, the district and school level crisis response teams. I was also assigned the district assessment coordinator and the school assessment coordinator, and I was very active in developing trauma-informed school practices at the school and district level. I have experience working with educators, administration, and support staff, helping families navigate the school experience for their students. I am a student advocate, an educator advocate, and a family advocate. If elected to the school board, I hope to use my professional experience to help educators and families ensure that all students have access to inclusive, compassionate, and evidence-based education. I want to foster a collaborative relationship with the community and the school district because I believe our cities, our communities, and our schools are stronger and safer when we can work together to support our youngest learners. Thank you.
Thank you. Trish Kluver. Welcome.
Everyone's speaking, but I'm Tris Cleaver, and I've been in the Brainerd area for, well, since the 70s. I've been here forever. I also married a family that's been here for about 60 years. I have about 100, 180 Brainerd alumni, just in nieces and nephews. My husband comes from a very large family in Brainerd. I also have, my kids I have 3 children, and they're all older now, and they were involved in many community services, some of you I've seen from with my kids. And I now have 9 grandkids, which 8 of them are in the public school district. 2 have left the public school district since 2 years ago. I've been trying to get kids to come back into the school district without the mandates and all the other stuff. And I was, during the COVID and the other stuff, I was distance teaching or helping distance teach 15 kids, grades kindergarten to senior year. That was very trying. And because I was working for necessary workers, they had to go to work, there was no choice, EMTs, pharmaceuticals, people, other people that had to be to work. And I've done in-home daycare for 40 years. I've worked with kids. I've worked with the school district from 0 to graduation with the IEPs, special ed, adaptive hockey. My kids were involved with a lot of the hockey and figure skating, and my list is long. What I'd like to see, I guess what I'd like to try and do is, like a lot of other people have said, the community is very important for our school district. Our kids are very important for our school district, teachers and parents. You know, we got to learn to get along. We've got to learn how to work. So it's about the kids. It isn't about all the politics that's going on right now. And I guess that's the main thing for me. And I've worked with, when I was distance teaching, I worked with 36 of the teachers for each one of the kids. Each one of the kids had, 5 to 6 teachers, because most of them were at Forest View in the high school. I've worked with admin, many of the admin, and I get along with them. We were trying to find out remedies and ways to distance teach on the computers, just have 15 computers all running at the same time with Zoom classes and everything else. You've really got to kind of be in tune with the teachers so we can make sure that the kids don't slip through the cracks with the in-home teaching. And that's about all I have to. I think I've done every program in the city of Brainerd, AEC, MAPS. I've dealt with every kid on those aspects, a lot of disabled kids, trying to get them in with the special needs and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Jessica Forsberg. Is Jessica here? Oh, okay, sorry.
Who's coming?
Hi.
Hi. Welcome.
Thank you. How are you guys doing?
Good, good.
Hey, Kevin. Sorry, just do this because better to be proactive. Okay, so I received a letter. Thank you for the invitation, and it said to keep it to 3 minutes. So my name is Jessica Lynn Forsberg, and I'm a semi-retired chemical engineer and a very part-time independent beauty consultant, Mary Kay. Oh, weird, but you know, I'm well-rounded. And why I wanted to run is because I love kids. I should have brought my picture with. I'm the longest running vacation Bible school teacher at my church down in the cities. It's just natural for me to be on boards. And I mean, I've always been from like, I don't know, involved in like everything you could possibly be involved in. Like children's choir, you know, being a walker patrol in elementary school, like student council, treasurer, sports, band, choir, musical, and students for environmental awareness, SEA, in high school, and All Colors United. And I went to their meeting and they looked at me like, you can't be here. I'm like, what? It says All Colors United. I can be here. You know, it doesn't say non-white unite. It says All Colors United. So that was really fun. We went to like pre-kindergarten places during Thanksgiving where we had the kids trace their pans on all different colors of paper and to make a turkey, of course, and then put them all up on the board together, you know, and like just teach them at a young age, you know, just about that, whatever, love sees no color. And so, I mean, I really think it's important, like pre-K, you know, I had heard like scientifically, like by the time you're 5, like your personality is basically like you're stuck at who you are. And then it kind of is, it's environmental factors and choices, and sometimes you don't have choices. I want to help, you know, I want to get involved, and I haven't found a church to do Vacation Bible School. Is it been 3 minutes? Is that what that beep was? Okay, well then I'll say I was on the Minnesota Government Engineering Board almost my entire career, and I was the treasurer for 4 because I got reelected. And when I got elected, I was a grad 2 engineer at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and I beat out a PE, professional engineer, from DOT. So I'm too bad. And I love boards. I love working together, and you know, helping people speak out, that, you know, giving them space to talk, you know, and not letting just some people like dominate, you know.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Trevor Mulholland.
Good evening. Excuse me. Thanks for inviting me this evening.
Welcome.
My name's Trevor Mulholland, born and raised in the Brainerd Lakes area. Have two daughters now that are in the district. I just had one that just graduated. My reasons for wanting to run for school board and join you guys is because, you know, I walked into the building today, right? The sign is a place to belong. Well, when you talk to community members today, they don't feel like that's the case. We need to work with our community members and actually bring it as a place to belong as a whole again for parents, students, and community members. The other thing is focusing on education again. We need to work on an education that's going to prepare our students for a real world of what's happening. I mean, you know, we have kids that are graduating high school that don't know how to do personal finance, stuff like that. How can we get that back into our curriculum to prepare them for real life scenarios? My children are basically the main reason I'm running, right? I saw a lot of what's happened the last couple of years. And yes, you can blame COVID for some of it, but when kids are scared to go to school because of things that are happening, we have to figure out how to fix that. So we really have to make it a place to belong for everybody. So that's the main reason I'm running right now, is to bring back the community. I'm a warrior, right? I graduated here, and I enjoyed my high school years, and we need to bring that back into the community and make the community involved with everybody else. So those are the main reasons that I'm running tonight.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you.
Mike Stanek.
Should have handed these waters out beforehand. Sitting back there parched. Thank you again. Nice to see everybody again. Pretty common seat for myself. My name's Mike Stanek, 40 years old, married to Elsie, a lifelong warrior, graduated in 2003. 3 kids in the district, all at Garfield Elementary. Mentioned that Elsie is the PTO president over there, and if there's any Garfield families out there, she wanted me to ask, please help with the PTO. My story is I come from Verndale, small school about 45 minutes west of here. Only child, single parent upbringing. I relied on and was inspired by teachers, administration, coaches mainly, my whole life. So much that I also went to be a teacher, went to CLC and transferred to Bemidji State. Got my degree in elementary education with a math emphasis in middle school. I reciprocated a lot of my coaching relationship by also coaching at different levels in high school, and also now volunteer in Brainerd as a youth, baseball, basketball, wrestling, wherever I can be used. My kids are fairly young. They're in 4th, 3rd, and 1st grade, so I'm gonna be here for a while. The other part of my life that drastically changed after getting my degree in education was a meeting with a recruiter. And I joined the military in 2002 and now have served honorably over 20 years, 16 of those being active duty. I'm no stranger to difficult times and difficult decisions. And with that being said, I know that this district has been through some hard times, and I'm no stranger to being the middle ground guy that comes in and talks about collaborativeness every time that I'm here. And that's truly why I want this so bad. It's not my first rodeo trying to get a seat on this board, is that this room needs to be a middle ground. We need to get away from the politicalness that this has brought on and do this for the right reasons, and that's the nonpartisan education of our children. And that's one of the main reasons why I want to do this. Advocating for children's voices. The last couple of years, we've been pretty distant with our student voices and parents. Every voice needs to be heard. Every voice needs to be heard. Educators, every kid's voice needs to be heard and should be heard. With that, if I'm lucky enough to be selected for this, that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get a middle ground person, nonpartisan, policy-driven, Thanks to the military, that's just who I am, black and white. Moderate-minded person who wants to advocate for those people, like I said. I welcome any questions for those that are watching, and I'll meet in the future door knocking. Please ask the difficult questions, because again, being that moderate guy in the middle, I'm getting questions from both sides, if you will, sides, right? So communication is the key, and I welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you. David Stimac.
I brought some notes so I can stay on time, okay?
Welcome.
Well, good evening. I'm David Stimac, and I'm a candidate for a 2-year seat on the District 181 School Board. I'm excited for this opportunity to run for the board. I've served my country for 29 years, and I'm ready to serve my community. I'm married to Christy, and we have a daughter, Annabelle, and a son, Jonathan. I received a Bachelor of Science degree from the United States Air Force Academy and a master's degree in Human Resource Management from Troy State University. I'm a retired Air Force colonel after serving 29 years on active duty. My career spanned 12 different duty assignments. I have lived in 7 different states, 2 countries, and had several deployments, including Iraq. I've also traveled throughout the numerous other countries throughout my military career, and what an educational experience that's been. Learning firsthand about different cultures, languages, and people. I spent the last 15 years of my military career in executive leadership positions, balancing operational, financial, personnel, and regulatory constraints. During one of my assignments, I was a commander of a group of 1,800 maintenance personnel responsible for 58 aircraft and the execution of a $243 million flying hour program. My last duty assignment was at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., where I supported the $400 billion F-35 aircraft program. I grew up in this area. I graduated from Crosby-Arrington High School, and we moved back to Brainerd in 2017. My wife is a Brainerd graduate. I wanted to be more involved with our children's education, so I applied for an educator license to become a short call substitute teacher in 2018. I've been substitute teaching and volunteering in both districts 181 and 182 ever since. I'm also an assistant high school baseball coach at Crosby-Arrington High School, and have coached youth hockey here in Brainerd for the last 5 years. Both of our children attend Forest View Middle School. Annabelle's in 8th grade, Jonathan's in 5th grade. Minnesota is the 3rd state that our daughter has attended school, and the 2nd for our son. We have enjoyed being a part of all of the school districts we have belonged to, and our children have been blessed with getting a quality education through the public school system. My career has provided me with amazing leadership experiences and educational opportunities that I can bring to the District 181 School Board. I have spent years making tough decisions that affected budgets, policies, and personnel. I am confident I can weigh all sides of an issue and make decisions that are in the best interests of our community. I wanted to help ensure we continue to offer the best educational experience and opportunities for all of our students, and ensure they are prepared for life after school, whether they enter the workforce, learn a trade, or attend college. Thank you for allowing me to address the board and to introduce myself. I have enjoyed getting to know some of the district teachers and staff, and I would be honored to join your board in December. Thank you.
Thank you. John Ward.
Good evening. I'd like to start by asking everyone to pray for Connor, number 21, a real warrior. I also want to thank all of you for your service and everybody that put their name on the line and everybody else that is here for their service. My name is John Ward. I'm married to Sally Ward for 48 years. We have 4 children, 11 grandchildren. I have spent 35 years in public education, teaching, coaching, and advising. 25 of those years, I also served as a coach, either head or assistant. I won one state championship as a coach and made several other state appearances with the activities I coached. I graduated from UMD in 1973 with a BS in FIAD, Health and Driver's Ed and Coaching, and master's from UMD in 1982 with a special ed master's, emphasis on LBD, learning disabled and emotional behavior disordered children. Most of my career was spent in special education. However, during my career, I was honored, humbled, and proud to be asked by school districts and public agencies to start 8 unique, innovative, and new kind of educational opportunities. For example, in Brainerd, I was the one that started the adapted floor hockey team here, and we won one state title under my tutelage. Also, I started the service learning program here, which we won a state award for. It was a class on social skills, life skills, job skills, personal skills, and connected the community business partnership with our school district. It started with 0 sites to go to. By the time I was done, we had 500 sites these kids could go to. So some of your students, some of your children, I had as students in service learning, and it was a great program. I was honored to be a district teacher of the year, Minnesota semifinalist of the year. In 2006, I was the Walmart State Teacher of the Year, where I secured $10,000, gave $5,000 to the service learning program, and $5,000 to the adapted floor hockey team. I will make my decisions based on facts, research, doing my homework, and listening to all with an open door. I believe I have God-given skills and talents that provide me with a good set of skills to be a board member. I have passion, energy, enthusiasm, knowledge, connections, and I will always keep our students, our parents, and our family as my top priority. I've held a number of elected positions, including serving in the Minnesota House of Representatives, where I served on 3 education committees. Education Finance, I was the vice chair of, Education Policy, and Early Childhood Family Education. I look forward to helping our district move forward. I'm truly honored and blessed to be here with all of you. Thank you. Good evening.
And Brent Yannick. Is there a Brent Yannick in the audience? Okay, he's the one that didn't respond. Okay. Well, thank you all. That was wonderful. What a great selection of candidates we have for this 2-year spot. And thank you for investing your time in our district, and we wish you all the best of luck. So we'll be seeing more of you. Thank you. And hopefully you'll stay for the rest of the meeting so you can see what all goes on here. Okay, next up we'll have the Blueprint 181 project update. I think Damian is here, Mark is here, Reed, I don't know.
He's coming.
Okay. I don't think we have any action items tonight, but there's a lot going on, so we thought we'd get an update.
No action items tonight, but there's been a lot of progress over the summer, and we should share a little bit of those milestones. Janet, you told me how to run this, and now I don't know how to. Here, help. We're stuck in share. Yeah, there we go.
Got it?
Okay. Good evening, I'm Mark Needham with ICS, going to present on the construction progress this summer, essentially for the ISD 188, 181 blueprint projects. So we'll get into, and I went picture heavy, word light, so I'll kind of describe it to you. So the first project here is the high school north campus. A couple photos that I'll run through and some of the progress that was made. In the photo to the left, that's the new, or the atrium space. you can see some of the new finishes, the new handrail that's installed, and most notably, the lower portion of that picture is the much wider hallways for student flow. One of the big points of emphasis for this project was to open that up and improve the flow of the project. The top right and middle right, those are two photos of the hallways, just kind of showing, again, that improved flow, the updated finishes, and then that middle picture there shows the existing bank of bathrooms and elevators, and kind of how the brick and existing building tie into the new building, just kind of a neat way to see the building. And then bottom right there, that's the new dance floor in the C101 room. Recently finished and ready for use. So I just
Also
another
known,
again.
also known as the old pool.
Yep, the old pool. Yep, filled that thing in with concrete and sand and foam and the whole 9 yards. So now you have a nice dance floor in there. The next set of photos here, so over on the left, that's one of the new updated bathrooms. If you can picture the old yellow tile that used to be in those spaces, this is a pretty big improvement over that. And then in the photo in the middle, that's again another portion of the hallway showing they're showing one of the conference spaces with the windows or I guess the open view into it, and then you can see behind it the natural light that it lets into the space as well. So that was also a big point of emphasis for this project as well, was to bring natural light into a lot of the rooms. So all the classrooms have a bank of windows at the top of them, allowing that light to infiltrate in. And then over on the right is the updated 5th Street there, and it's got that new boulevard down the middle of it. I'm sure it's been interesting to navigate as folks get used to it now that it's open, but again, helping with the flow of traffic. Next on the list is the Lincoln Education Center, starting with two photos here of the exterior of the building. Over on the left is the pergola setup on the north side of the building with some of the landscaping that you can see, and then you can see the Ox Gym in the background. And then the picture on the right is the new front entry and parking lot where the building used to stand. So demolished quite a bit of space there, and then updated the front end of this with new safe and secure entrances and a lot of the amenities that go with that. So as you can see, they're a very different look than what it used to be. Some photos of the interior, kind of going around the circle here on the left-hand side, that smaller space, that's a collaboration space where that's right outside of the kind of the fax labs, if you call it that, and then for different training purposes and uses. And then towards the top left, just a photo of some of the finishes that were used in the space, again with the emphasis being on very durable finishes. So that's a tile wall in the layout that they chose, the design team chose for the layout to kind of accent it, and then very durable flooring materials. Continuing to the right there is a set-up classroom that was taken here pretty recently, but that's that's the end product, what it was all put together for. Across the bottom, you can see a picture of the new playground that was installed and the equipment that was put in there. And then on the bottom right is the new gym that was updated from an old mechanics shop. So squeezed every bit of use out of that space that we could. Next project, the Brainerd Learning Center. Couple of photos here. The one to the left, that's the computer skills room. All we really did was add carpet and change the furniture in there, but it's a totally different feel than what it used to be. So it's far more functional and a lot more flexibility to it. On the right-hand side, top right, that's the new fax lab for that school. So the top right and middle photos are of the same space, just from different views. You can see there's the kind of the sit-down teaching space and then the hands-on space there. So turned that in from a large motor skill kids space into fax lab space. So quite a bit of changes that came along there. And then the picture on the bottom is the new commons area. So now there's space for students to eat lunch, specifically designated for that. So, and in there they've got some durable finishes along the wall to protect from chair use, and then a mosaic that was put together by members from the school. Two more photos of that one. The picture to the left is the new entryway with the new reception desk, and then the opportunity, innovation, and success wall graphic behind it, and kind of a little lobby waiting space. So that space turned out pretty good too, as far as finishes and updates go. And then to the right is the new entryway with the pylon and new signage signifying or to match what we've done with the rest of the schools. And just some general touch up there, did some painting and repairs to existing finishes. So that came out pretty good as far as the entryway goes. And then just a quick update here too on this building. So Washington Educational Services Building, we're in the middle of pre-construction activities. We're working with contractors, trying to dial in procurement schedules already. As you know, that's been a challenge for the past couple of years, so we're trying to get as big of a head start on that as we can. We're in for state plan review right now. We're expecting comments back on that shortly. I did get notified today that they have finally started looking at it, so we're next in line. And then we're also developing a couple of different scenarios for the Welcome Center and some admin space. So we're working on some pricing exercises there and are reviewing the layouts to a couple of those spots. And then our anticipated start date, we're looking at more, I guess you can call it the beginning of November for construction activities, looking to start setting up move-out activities for the MEA weekend and starting to prepare around milestone dates for those to help planning and coordination, because there are a lot of pieces in this building that have to go to new homes. So, and the photos there, one is the existing building and the other one below it is our poll planning session that we did for our schedule. Each one of those is a post-it note that I had a contractor put up there. So it's kind of a fun exercise, but it gets everybody involved. So we are digging into that detailed schedule. Any questions?
So we will still be in this place for our next board meeting. And then the following board meeting, we will be maybe at Forest View.
Yep.
Okay. Wonderful.
At the multi-purpose gym that used to be the swimming pool, I saw there's basketball lines on there, 3-point line. Are there volleyball lines too? Then is there a basketball hoop in there?
No basketball hoops in there now. I believe that's going to be temporary stanchions, if call it that, basketball hoops.
A lot of the markings, Charles, are for like the dance program. They use the court markings for their points of reference as they're practicing, so that when they practice in that gym and then go to the big gym, the court is the same. So we have that, volleyball equipment, we're working on putting those in there. So really it's a consistent practice area for the dance and gymnastic and cheer teams to be able to, dance and cheer teams to be able to use if they needed to use that space, so.
That makes sense.
Yep.
I tipped my hand that I don't have a dance background.
My wife would punch me in the shoulder if I didn't have that answer correct, so.
We learned something. Us non-dancers.
So, as just I mentioned, ICS officially moved out of the Red House, so it is ready for occupancy from the school district.
Okay.
We did open a satellite office behind McDonald's or in the close Converse building, so we're in the lower level, so if you guys want to stop over, we can buy you a cup of coffee, so.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Beautiful pictures, thank you. It's just, I was in high school last week and it's wonderful. And just get the flooring done and it'll be all set.
A lot of work to go yet. There's still a lot of follow-up and punch list items and closeout documentation, stuff like that we're working on every day. And we appreciate everybody's patience getting through this. So it was a lot of work throughout the summer, and I think it turned out very nice. So.
We accomplished $12 million over the 4 months, and it was a lot of work. $1 million in site work, $11 million in site A-wing. Our first summer we completed 16 million. Kind of give you an idea. It wasn't the largest summer we've had here, but it was definitely a big undertaking.
Yeah, especially in that small space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're a little more spread out last time around. So.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's all looking great. So thank you. Any questions?
You're welcome.
Hearing none. Thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys.
Next up, we have Tim Murtha and Sue Anderson to go over our data review.
With the distinct pleasure this year of Dr. Burkhart from the Student Support Services Division to join us. So as time goes on, it's less and less the Tim and Sue show. And so
All right, I have to find it. On the bottom?
it was there this earlier, I saw it. That's what I thought it was. There it is.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Okay. This is an annual presentation. Many of you board members who've been with the board for a number of years have seen this show before. This is part one of a two-part presentation that deals primarily here with the district proficiency data for student performance on the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments as it relates to the continuous improvement process that we use in the district. As you know, in August, we had the continuous improvement retreat where principals and their site leadership teams came together. They reviewed data, they set goals, they created action plans. And what we're going to share with you is both the guidance and the framework for looking at the data that we gave them in their work on that day in August, the first day in August, which will be August 10th. 9th. Okay. And in part two, next week, next month, we'll bring forward to you for your approval the site goals and the site action plans that we bring every single year. So how have they responded to what we're seeing in the data is the key findings. What are they going to do in response to that and how they lay that out? There are a couple of caveats that we want to make sure that we're aware of as we look at the data, that when we compare this year's data to last year's data or any previous year data, certainly trend lines matter, but trend lines during the COVID pandemic, as you know, are very hard to calculate because participation rates varied, testing conditions varied, and also the requirements for testing varied. This will be, the data that we have from last spring is the very first true baseline data where the participation rate for students testing is comparable to what we've historically had. So there's a couple year interval there where it's uneven. So we're going to try to show comparisons where we feel comparisons are legitimate, but we're also going to not make comparisons where we feel that the discrepancy in the number of people participating means that the numbers don't represent the same thing. I'll give a very good example of that later in the presentation. I'm also giving you what's proficiency data versus accountability data. Proficiency data is data that is calculated only on the number of those who took the test. Whereas accountability data takes the total number of people who took the test, but then counts non-participation as non-proficient. So it generates two different numbers. And the accountability number, of course, being a smaller or a larger population of non-proficients, will always be the lower number. That's the number you would see on the Minnesota report card. We will be bringing forward the achievement and the accountability data with the site data when we come in October. So you will get both. But today we're looking at the proficiency data because that's what the site teams had access to when the continuous improvement retreat existed. Unfortunately, as Minnesota Department of Education gets older, they're getting slower and slower in giving us the accountability data. So we got it the Monday before the Tuesday retreat. Not enough time for us to examine, evaluate, and bring it forward. So we had plenty of data, and we had it a long time in proficiency. That is the data we use to set the plans. So that's why those numbers are discrepant. Does that make sense? Okay, long preview to hopefully a short presentation. As you guys all know, everything in the curriculum and staff development and continuous improvement world in our district starts with the promise that to our community that the standards define what children will know and be able to do at each level in every grade. So the teachers always, this is what we start with the site teams. That simple grounding reminder that the standards matter. We teach to them, we fulfill them. We are responsible for all of them. We cannot assess every single standard to mastery, because that's all we would do, then is assess. So through the curriculum process, the site teams and the teacher teams make decisions on what are the priority standards. We're still required to fulfill all of them, but to the deepest level of assessment, we assess those that we think are the most important, moving a child forward. What do they need to know to be successful for next year? What do they need to know to be college and career ready? What do they need to know in order to be workforce ready as well? So those are the things that we consider when we go through that process of selecting the power standards or the priority standards that we use. So this has been the directions that the teachers would have been received on August 9th. The superintendent charged the teachers, now more than ever, we need to be fully engaged with our data. It's the same charge that we had last year. We're creating goals and plans, which are touch points for sites throughout the year. Through the generosity of the school board, we've added in-service days to the year to allow sites to do implementation work on their site plans, to allow to do professional learning on how to fulfill those plans, and how to make those plans living documents and not statements of hope this changes, but we don't have time to do it. So your gift of time to the sites is deeply appreciated. There's certain I'm jumping ahead. There are certain key findings that we saw in the data as a system. I'll give some highlights of this. What we're fundamentally seeing is there are clear signs of recovery in student performance. However, it is an unequal recovery. We're going to see that we already know that comparing the data is difficult because of the student participation rates and that we have a new baseline for ourselves moving on. But what we really are seeing is that proficiency gaps increased for students who are categorized as in economic benefit, what we used to call free and reduced price lunch, or students in poverty. And those gaps increased for special education students as well. So even though we have data to indicate that groups of students significantly recovered, if not excelled, there are groups that are still not fully recovered from the pandemic. And within these groups, particularly economic benefit and special education, within these groups, racial and ethnic proficiency gaps continue at roughly the same rate as they did the previous year. So we have not closed those achievement gaps yet, or those proficiency gaps. What we are seeing is high rates of special ed student identification. We are placing large numbers of students into special ed, and what this is indicating to us is a need for a more robust MTSS structure, multi-tiered system of support, so that we're doing more in earlier levels of intervention. Classroom interventions, what we call tier 1. Tier 2 interventions, which are release, pull out, but not necessarily a deep long-term intervention. But we need to have a better structure than what we currently have in order to meet the needs so students are not falling into the discrepancy which places them in special ed. Some highlights of the year, though. Some things that jump out as examples that we are seeing evidence of recovery. Now, this year it happens to all be in math. Okay, that doesn't mean there weren't some successes in literacy, but the more profound ones were in math, so we're going to roll with math this year. The math proficiency rate at Lowell Elementary, third grade, non-agate students, agate being the Academy for the Gifted and Talented, so they're regular students, was 82.7% in 2022 with a comparable participation rate to pre-pandemic levels. This is an outstanding performance on their part, and they need to be recognized for it. Math proficiency rate at Nisswa in third grade equally was significant at 78%. Math proficiency rate at Baxter Elementary, third grade, 68.4 in 2022. These mark significant gaps between a significant improvement over the state and over what we had expected based on previous data from earlier years. Finally, and this one's an interesting statistic, and it sheds light on the difference between accountability and proficiency. Math proficiency for 8th grade was 61.4% in 2022, and that's a 22.3% improvement from their 7th grade proficiency. The key here to also understand is that more students did take the test in 8th grade than in 7th grade. It is a sign of success anytime we're significantly better than the state in terms of performance. The state achievement rate is about 20 points below that. So our participation rate increased, and we're significantly beating the state. This is a high-functioning team that's done some good things. However, to be fair to the data, we must qualify that more students took the test, and it's quite possible that the population in 7th grade that did not take the test is a population that would have performed better than the number that was generated by those who did take the test. That's why you see me trying to be very careful in where can we compare and where we can't compare. The lower the age of the students, the more we can compare. We can compare 3rd and 4th grade with relative accuracy between 2022 and 2021. When we get up into the upper grades, as the participation rates deviate in terms of how many participated 2 years ago versus last spring, those numbers are less reliable for comparison. That's why we have to view this last spring as the new baseline in the data.
You'll get there, I think, later on in this, right? But prior to 2020, then, are you able to disaggregate out the proficiency data?
Yes, absolutely. We have that. We would want to do it prior to 2020 because there was no accountability in 2020.
Right, but prior to that, it was always there.
Oh, correct. And we have the historic data going back all the way. For the principals and the site teams, that's always known as the fishhook slide, where we go take a whole graduating class and we back map their proficiency from 3rd grade to 4th grade to 5th grade to 6th grade, all the way through each Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment. And we then lay that against multiple years. And we're looking at what's the experience of a cohort as they move through the system, to give us that system view. That's something I tend to deal a little bit more with in the second presentation than this one because it deals with accountability data, but you're on the right, we're thinking the same thing. Okay. So the context that we lay out for teachers and principals at the CIP retreat is simple. The MCAs do matter. There are people who say that they do not, but we have to be careful about that. If, like any source of data, it has to be used correctly. It's a dipstick. It's a 1-year check the engine that allows us to create trend lines over time. We're having to reset those because of the pandemic, but it allows us to take a look at how is the curriculum and how is our assessment structures performing over time. Instruction is better measured by formative assessments and classroom assessments at the grade level, at the team level, at the site level. Because assessment, the instruction, those assessments are responding directly to immediate instruction. And that feedback allows them to shape instruction. That's why we have a professional learning community process, or a PLC process. So as long as we're using the data correctly in its context, it does give us information. Also, as we know by law, the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments contain a material benefit to a student who is proficient. If a student is proficient at the high school level MCAs, they cannot be required at their own expense to take remedial courses in any min-school school. So it reduces the cost of post-secondary education for that student to be proficient. That is not an insignificant thing in this day and age. Okay, so the MCAs matter. Are they the universal evaluation tool for the quality of a school? Absolutely not. It's one data point in an array of data points that involve attendance, that involve graduation rates, that involve parent and family satisfaction, that involve student engagement, and some of the more difficult things to assess, such as the quality of the relationships between adults and children, children and children, school and families, families and children, that are absolutely essential to make the education process work. It cannot all be separated. That's the criteria for evaluating the quality of a school. One of the primary goals of the continuous improvement treat is to make sure that we're not dealing with random acts of improvement or random acts of excellence. I pointed to examples where we've been successful in improving student achievement and in some cases closing achievement gaps, but what we have to do is get all the arrows going in the same direction. That is something that as a district we had made significant inroads and progress on prior to the pandemic. A lot of interruption, and our data is telling us we're still feeling some of the effects of that interruption. Hopefully, This year, with the quality of the plans that the principals and their teacher leaders created, we're addressing those, taking them head on. We're not going to be afraid of the challenge of creating coherence in our system. The purpose of the continuous improvement process we lay out, we always want to make sure that we have a why to our teachers when we ask them to work. It's to encourage the coherence and connections. It's to shift mindsets. It's to stay focused on the how that we do things. And what we're doing ultimately is we're asking a simple question. What will the adults do differently? It isn't about identifying groups that have a problem and saying, well, they've always had a problem. It's not about finding excuses, well, if they're from that part of town. No, what are we going to do to make sure that each child knows and understands and meets the learning targets that are defined by the standards? Which means that we need to be able to work with the adults, challenge the adults, support the adults, engage with the adults on what beliefs, attitudes, and dispositions must all staff members have in order for the district to succeed or the school to succeed. Does each and every individual adult in this building understand that each child can learn? Do they believe that? Does each adult in that building believe and understand that we are collectively responsible for each and every child in that building? There's not my kids, your kids. There's not my regular ed classmate, oh, that's special ed. Each is each, and we're collectively responsible for it. Any success in creation of relationships, implementing guaranteed and viable curriculum comes down to those shared collective efficacy of the beliefs of the adults in that building. And when there are discrepant or divergent beliefs, we need to provide professional learning, opportunities for growth. We need to provide the why and the how to help support those changes. And sometimes that means we have to be willing to have the courageous conversation and challenge those beliefs, attitudes, and dispositions which must leave the system. I taught it, they didn't learn it. That's got to go. You're not sending me anything that I can produce to grade level. We have to embrace this is where each child is, and we need to provide them with the resources to get each child to where they're at. That's the disposition we need. There are 6 steps in the continuous improvement plan, and I think at this point, Ms. Anderson gets to talk. You've heard enough from me.
Good evening. Okay, in the plan that the teachers and our principals look at during the data retreat, there's 6 different parts of it. They articulate their improvement team, who's at the table. They review the district improvement goal. They will do their needs analysis, which is a lot of work that they do on that first day where they're really digging into their data. They will look at their improvement targets and determine their ACOMP goal. And then probably the biggest chunk of the rest of the work is what are we going to do? Once they've figured out their goals, once they've made their targets, then they decide what they're going to do about it and implement their improvement designs. The plan evaluation is always done at the end of the year. So before all of that work started, they talked about last year. And they wrapped up their plan, they did their evaluation, and then they started on the new one. As we've talked already, our data is different because we've had a break in our trend line. So 17, 18, and 19 are all consistent trend lines. 20, there was no MCA assessment at all. 2021 is not really comparable because students had to take the test in school. They could not do it remotely. We did not have all students in school at that point, as well as there was no requirement for trying to get makeups done because our testing calendar got a little wonky at the end. We had a short period of time to get all the tests done. So kids who were there and able to test did, but not everybody was able to do so. And then now in 2022, we are back into where the expectation is 95% of our students at a minimum at each grade level that an MCA is available will participate in the test. So we're back into the accountability realm. Those indicators that the state of Minnesota looks at are academic achievement, which is basically proficiencies on math and reading assessments, academic progress, which is achievement band movement. They assign a formula for a student if they are a third grader and they meet the standard in math in third grade and they meet the standard in fourth grade, they get a positive number. If they went backwards or they were not proficient in third grade and they stayed not proficient in fourth grade, they don't earn any points. And it is a calculation for the whole school, but in an elementary school, it's only for fourth grade because they have to have 2 years of an assessment over the course. Graduation rates, there's a 4-year graduation rate for our high school. It is expected that when a student lands in 9th grade, they track that cohort, and the expectation is they will graduate within those 4 years. For our ALC, there is a proposal on the market that we are going to have a 7-year rate for our BLC, Brainerd Learning Center, because the student population that is attending an ALC is already in trouble on being able to graduate in 4 years. So they were held to an indicator that was pretty much not going to happen for many. So a 7-year rate is much more helpful for us, but it hasn't passed the federal level yet. And then consistent attendance. The expectation is that 90% of our student population will attend school for 90% of the school year. So the expectation is they will miss less than 16 days of school. And that is for any reason. That is excused, unexcused. It doesn't matter what the reason that they are gone. It is they have to be here for 16 days or less in order to be considered consistently attending. The other caveat is a student has to be enrolled in our school district at least for 50% of the year for that accountability indicator to mean something. So, specifics. They have a lot of 2025 expectations. For a key achievement gap, for reading and math achievement rates, they want to have 90% of the students, the all student category, meeting 90% of the proficiency rate. And no student group, meaning the free and reduced, any special ed category, being below 85% proficient on the reading and math assessments by 2025. Grade 3 reading is very specifically called out at that same level. 8th grade math is called out at that same level. Progress towards English language proficiency. This is something that we do have a population of students in our district that take the access test for ELL. However, our pockets of population are not large enough where accountability really comes into play yet. That is changing every year. We will get there relatively soon, I expect. Graduation rate, now this is post, so we're looking at 2020. We're always a year behind on graduation rate because it's based upon Mars submission. So right now, we know the 2021 information. We do not know the 2022 information. We will get that probably in February of 2023. The graduation rate expectation is students, 90% will graduate within 4 years, and no subgroup will be below 85%. And then the consistent attendance, again, they are now bumping it up to, they want 95% of our student population with nobody below 90 on the attendance piece. And this is just an FYI piece of information the state did new because of the pandemic and all of the enrollment issues that some of the school districts in the state of Minnesota have experienced because of the pandemic. They went back and gave an enrollment summary for maintenance of enrollment. So they looked at Brainerd and they said for 5 years prior to the pandemic, our rate of, average rate was 95.4 or 95.5% of our students came back every year over those 5 years. And when the pandemic hit, our current rate is now at 92.3. So there is a difference in our enrollment based upon what happened before and what is happening now. The reason that they calculated this is for accountability. Some schools, because of their enrollment fluctuation, has been identified for support through accountability that maybe they wouldn't have been if they had their full population normally there. So this was an indicator that they calculated. It doesn't affect Brainerd at all. It's just an FYI for you because Brainerd has not been identified for support in 2022. And that's it.
What we have next is the actual data that was used at the continuous improvement retreat, at least from the district level. What you see here, I know it's a very hard to read slide. This is something we usually print out and give the sites to look at so you can look bigger, because I can't read my own notes with the bifocals on, so I'm staring at the screen. What you see is the demographic breakdown of the district by site. So the federal codes are in here: gender, special ed, non-special ed, free and reduced lunch, reduced price, not eligible. This is a quantitative point on that spectrum of who are we. So if we are Baxter, we see that 3% of our students consider themselves, identify as multi-race. 1% of our students identify as American Indian. We get a sense of who we are at the site level based on this. And this is where we start comparing these numbers against the achievement numbers of the disaggregated numbers to start looking at who's succeeding, who is struggling, who's moving forward, who might be accidentally being left behind, and allows us to address that and create the plans that help us move forward and address those needs. So it starts with understanding who we are. Math proficiency for the year. So we're looking primarily at the right side of the slide, the 2022 slide. At the district level, we really cannot compare back easily to the previous year. At the elementary level, we can. And the middle school level, it's a mix. I would say I'd be careful of comparing that middle school number. I do not believe that the high school numbers are comparable between 2021 and 2022. Okay. And what we see is we're a flat line in math across the board at the elementary level, to an extent that we can assert that at the middle school level. At the high school level, we're seeing a dip. We don't know if increased participation is bringing back a certain population versus another. So hypothetically, we might be flatline there. Certainly, the end result is these are not numbers that we're comfortable with. And these reflect some unique challenges to us to get back to what you see as the pre-pandemic levels of 2017, 2018. That there's work to do to get back to there. Because this goes to your question, Director Boyles, about comparing the usable data now versus the cohorts in the past. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
And prospectively, do they plan to put the accountability feature back into the MCAs, or is that
They
up for
have.
grabs? They have.
So last
So it
year's
goes
data
back
is,
to like 2018,
Sue, I'm going to let you feel that one.
standard-wise, I mean, like how they measure it?
The measurement is back for 2022. So the problem that we had this year is they released that information on the Monday before the data retreat. So there was no way for us to redo all the slides to include that accountability piece.
Yeah,
So it is there in 2022, but it wasn't there in 21, it wasn't there in 20. They are not bridging the gap. They are basically 17, 18 is going to fall off, and they're starting now with 2022.
So it goes back to, I think, what you had about 3 slides ago, which is you have that 2022 is your, I mean, if we're going to build a true new trend line, we need 2 more years of MCAs to get back on track.
That is correct for state accountability. I think it's appropriate for us to look back to 2017 and prior and compare where we're at now to then. We have to keep in mind that we have to, if we're going to improve, we have to get back to the levels of performance we used to have so we can exceed them. So we want to recognize the interruption of the pandemic, but at some point here, as it recedes into the past, it can't be the excuse.
Fair enough, and I'm not wrapped around the difference between the proficiency and the accountability. I'm trying to frame it in a way so that as we look forward and that becomes the preeminent data that's used, right, that people understand why there's that gap.
Correct.
I mean, I didn't realize we had proficiency data going all that way back, so that we have some continuity there with the, I guess, the 2-year gap in that too.
We can actually go back to 1998 with the establishment of the BST tests, which were the very first statewide accountability tests. So whatever data you want, we got.
So can you go back one slide, and how does that match up with previous slides on what the state goal is for 2025?
Well, if 85% proficiency is the indicated goal for 2025, Brainerd would have a long way to go, along with everyone else in the state. We have the advantage of starting closer than most anyone in the state, but clearly those are significant gaps that we need to close.
So I want, and maybe we can wait until the end of the presentation, but to me, all the data is, and we've had these conversations before, it's such lagging indicators, it's so old information that it's too late to do any correction. So when, it doesn't matter, the state comes out and says, well, we want you to be at 85%, we don't know how you're gonna get there, good luck. And here we can see that, we're even pre-COVID, we're miles away from that. And to me, it has to do with, I hope at some point in time, it won't be in my tenure on the school board, but at some point in time that we have real data that is current. And what I mean by current, it's like not any older than maybe 30 or 60 days. And hopefully someday technology allows us to get there, because it's way too late for us to do anything with this.
And I'm going to agree with you 100%, Director Hagelin. And you heard me reference the MTSS, the more alphabet soup in education. That's what that's for. That we are identifying data that's actionable. I'm uncomfortable creating a one-size-fits-all regimen of benchmarking and progress monitoring that says every 2 weeks we're going to track your progress towards grade level proficiency at the end of the year. We use the we use the STAR assessment. For other districts should use an NWA MAP test as a benchmarking tool. We do it right now in the fall. We have data from the midwinter, and then we do it again in the spring. And that allows us to predict a certain level of accuracy of performance on the MCA. So it does give you data to respond to in the here and now, but you're talking a couple of months between them. At the granular level, the highest impact data that we can generate and respond to are high quality formative and summative assessments in the classroom that PLCs look at weekly. That's going to look different though from a K through 4 PLC at Harrison versus a second grade PLC at Baxter, which will look different than a 5th grade Team A analysis of data and a 7th grade. So there's some contextual differences to each of those levels, but the framework has to be common. And that's what the purpose of that formative assessment data is. Now, if we were to attempt to report out on each and every single one of the almost 100 PLCs we have in the district, the presentations of mine that you complain about for length, for good reason, would be much longer. Okay? That's the site continuous improvement work that they need to be doing. I certainly am willing to bring forward the STAR data from fall, winter, and spring as the predictors of performance on the MCAs. They're not a perfect predictor. There is no perfect predictor because Minnesota has not fully embraced or fully adopted the Common Core standards. Some of the standards are Common Core, some of the standards are not. So certain assessments which are geared to those don't really help. One of the unique things about our 8th grade math team, as highly successful as they are, is the 8th grade Minnesota standards do not align to the 8th grade Common Core math standards. Not only is there no assessment for them to go buy off the shelf that's going to help them, it also means there's no resource that they can buy that's tuned to the Minnesota standards, unless they're using certain Minnesota created stuff, which is a different conversation. So Director Hagelin, to answer your question, we can give you benchmarking data now. It's part of our MTS structure. That's what we've started in the pandemic, knowing that we'd need it coming out of the pandemic. Dr. Burkhart will talk a little bit more about that. So your desire for that benchmark data, we can get it to you, but I doubt if we'll ever be able to give you at least concisely every single grade level, every single classroom's PLC level data. But that's the most powerful data to change practice, and we should be responding to. Sorry, I felt that was a long-winded explanation. I am trying to get you what you want, Director Hagelin. There's a process to get there.
Sure. And it isn't so much what I'm looking for, it's more what I think the teachers and our staff need so they can make these corrections and make these moves on a timely basis versus after the fact. So we have from fall to spring to take this, every child from that 60, whatever that percent is, and strive for that 85% by the end of the school year.
One of the things we
You
have
can't do
to,
that without data that's happening.
real time, you're absolutely correct. And that's what we've been trying to get to for multiple years. Got much harder in the pandemic. We were closer, God's honest truth.
Keep pushing for it, though. Keep pushing for it.
I think the principals would say I push. Okay. All right. We won't go through every single data slide at this length. You've been very patient with me. But what I want you to see here is the size and scope of the achievement gaps that exist within economic hardship. So these are students in poverty, these are students in special ed. What was true for us before the pandemic is more true for us now post-pandemic. Our largest group of students with an achievement gap are our students in poverty, quantitatively the number of students. The group with the largest achievement gap are our students in special ed. And as our identification rates are relatively high in our district, this is not a small number of students. This constitutes 1 in 4 of our students are in special ed. And when that's your largest achievement gap, if you want to change the student achievement performance, to raise that and meet the 85% levels that they're talking about at MDE, these are the two populations we have to address in a very targeted fashion in order to do that. And that doesn't mean that it's a special education problem to solve. It means that more has to be done in core instruction, tier 1 and tier 2 interventions to prevent students from falling into education. And it also means that special education needs to review their identification processes to make sure that we're identifying correctly. There's stuff here for each of us to own in this process. Okay. The reading data follows a similar pattern. We might be outperforming the state. We are not where we historically are. And clearly, because the points of pride this year were primarily in math, we have some work to do in this area. And you see the same pattern playing out in terms of economic benefit students with a consistent achievement gap and the largest achievement gap in special education. You will see the same pattern playing out in our science data as well at the district level. Sue, this one's yours.
For your graduation rate, for accountability purposes, you have to have a minimum of 10 students in a subgroup in order to be counted. In other areas, it's up to 20. So here I am listing all of the graduation rates from 2021 for all categories that we had numbers. That does not mean that we had enough students for that to count for accountability. Typically, it is the all category, the free and reduced, and the special education categories only that count for accountability. But the data's there, and I wanted to share that with you.
At this point, I'm going to drill into some of the disability identification data in special education for the district. This is the slide that indicates our rate of identification, with 27% of our students being identified with an IEP or having a disability, compared to 16.9% of the state as an average. And that 16.9% of the state indicates a small incremental increase over time. But we are placing students in special ed at a much higher rate than the state does. So we need to review what are the learning experiences students are having, and we need to review our practices, procedures, and policies that identify the placement process. This slide indicates a comparison by disability, the primary disabilities, excuse me, between the district, the state across the top, and in color, Brainerd over time. And we see that our SLD, our specific learning disability, is where we're seeing placement increase the most. And so we're going to have to unpack that. We're going to have to drill into that and compare that to the state. So what you're really seeing here is if the state of Minnesota is identifying SLD at 3.8%. What we are doing in Brainerd is we're identifying at a rate of 5.4%. And that's a significant difference. And it's going up over time. So we're going to have some work to do here if we're going to close the achievement gaps in special ed. Part of that is the identification issues. And in terms of when we identify, there are racial and ethnic discrepancies in our identification process. So when we take a look at the risk ratio, that fourth column on the right, if we look at white students, 24% of our white students have a disability or an IEP. That 0.96 risk ratio is the comparison to the whole group. So if I am an American Indian student, I'm 1.58 times as likely to be in special ed as another student in that whole group. When we break it down to the top 5 disabilities, so that's with any disability. So when we break it down into the 5 largest disability groups, if you're in that group, if you are a black student, you're 2.06 times as likely to be placed in one of those 5 areas. We need to review some practices, procedures, and policies, as well as our instruction and assessment to attack these issues. When we do the analysis of disability by classification of race, so if we look at SLD, which I had mentioned earlier because it had the highest, the increasing trend line, it was our largest identifying group. Our participation rate of 16% for American Indian students, compared to 7% identification for white, or 8% for Hispanic, or 9% for black, indicates that we have to be aware of the impact of the decisions the adults are making in the system. And we have some work to do. So this is the charge that the teams were given at the site level at the retreat. The school board and the district are committed to equity for each student. Race-based achievement gaps do exist. We cannot treat each child the same. We have to find out their needs and meet their needs. How will we know where each child is when they start the school? This is your data question about the baseline. How will we use the structures we have to address the needs of each individual? We have to be focused on what we can control. We cannot wave a wand and stop the mobility challenge of students who are forced to move during the school year between schools. We attempt to deal with this with structures and transportation, but even for then, some families must change schools. So do we have a guaranteed viable education in each elementary school that ensures that when a child leaves one school and has to move to a different school, they're stepping in close to scope and sequence and pacing guide, so the interruption of their life does not become as profound an interruption in their education. The standards, as we said, is where we start all curriculum work. We know the fixed, unmoving point on the horizon that we're working towards and that we're constantly working towards. We know that in order to meet that, we need more differentiation in core instruction. We need to identify the interventions that are occurring there, because sometimes they occur and we don't document it because we're not aware that it's an intervention, we just think it's good teaching. We need a little bit more data there. We know that we can't intervene our way forward. We can't send the kid out of the classroom, or all the kids who need gap closure out of the classroom, for somebody else to fix and send back. That's not how it works. That is when we're not living up to the belief of we collectively own each child. It's not my kids, your kids. It's ours. Differentiation measure current quarantine, we already said that. The MCAs matter, but it's only one indicator. There's other data we have to look at, whether it's attendance, communication, participation, graduation rates, on track for graduation. There are multiple data points that we want to evaluate ourselves on as a system. At the CIP retreat, we're focused on the inputs. It's our hope that less time is spent arguing about whether we're shooting for a 3.5% gain or a 5.5% gain than we are on what will we do? How will we measure the fidelity of implementation? How will we hold ourselves accountability for the change that we're promising? Today, on that day, we should emphasize what the adults know and are able to do. The CIP retreat is about changing adult behavior because that's the change of input that changes the output in the system. To these ends, the district has identified 4 areas that guide the work of the sites. We know that we're going to initiate new strategic planning now that we have a new superintendent. It's a common thing to do at the change of leadership at the top. And someone who's been here for almost 10 years, it's time. Not a criticism of the previous administration, but after X number of years, you do have to reevaluate what your strategic plan is. We know we need to create our multi-tiered system of support. We know we need to work intentionally to address the social emotional learning needs of each of our students. If our students are dealing with trauma, they will not be able to take advantage of the learning experiences we create for them. We know this. This is about building relationships. This is about directing resources to help where help is needed. And we know that we need to infuse that sense that each child is unique and each child is valuable, and infuse that equity lens through everything that we do. So this was the charge given to the sites. And now, Dr. Burkhardt has patiently waited for her moment.
Good evening, Board of Directors. So I want to just touch briefly on a few of those areas that Mr. Murtha just mentioned. So the first around that MTSS strategic priority for our district. So we are fortunate we have a MTSS team, a district MTSS team, and I'm going to put them on the spot. I'm going to ask them to stand if they're in the room, because many of them are in this room right now. If you are on the district MTSS team, please stand. I know it's many of you.
I stand up, you can't see.
There we go. So you can see some of our other administrators that serve on this district MTSS team. We also have school counselors, school psychologists, other teachers that are part of this and really supporting us in the work that we're doing around our MTSS strategic planning. And for those of you that don't know, MTSS is multi-tiered systems of support. So it's really a replacement for previous terms around response to intervention, RTI. MTSS is now the term that we use instead of RTI. And MTSS is really a continuous improvement process. It's a framework for thinking about all of these different initiatives that we have going on in our school. All of these should really braid into MTSS so that we're not doing PLCs alone. We're really using PLCs as that way to think strategically about the data that we have, to use that data, to Director Hagelin's point, to really guide our instruction day to day and be responsive to our students' needs in the moment. Just like we're using our Northern Pines mental health therapists to support around MTSS and thinking about those students that may need a little bit extra support outside of just their caring classroom teacher. So if you can go to the next slide. So our district MTSS team, we've been really fortunate this past year to get to work alongside the University of Minnesota, MDE, and the Regional Centers of Excellence to do deep work with planning for MTSS and setting some strategic goals. So these are our goals for this coming school year. The first is to continue to develop our school leadership to really be able to support the work of MTSS within their buildings. That will include looking at schedules, really thinking about when are those times that if we need to do Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention, that we have some flexibility within a schedule to really base it off of what that student needs. Developing in a district-wide MTSS handbook and furthering our staff's knowledge. So we did some of that work during Welcome Back Week and just studying the groundwork of what is MTSS, what do we mean by that when we say that? And we had a lot of good feedback from staff on understanding this is already what I do. I just need some language and tools to understand that I already have this in place and to further the work. Our second goal is around Tier 2 programming. So as you saw from the data, we have some real challenges in our special education identification rates. We are referring students for special education at rates far higher than the state of Minnesota. And we need to take a step back and really look at what is our programming, what are those academic and social emotional learning interventions that we can put in place that we know are evidence-based, that we know are robust, and use those to really monitor the data that our students have. And then that third one is around assessment. So we are going to really be looking at our comprehensive district-wide assessment plan and thinking about what are those screening tools like a STAR, what are progress monitoring tools that we can use that are more frequent in the moment, ways of measuring student outcomes, what are outcome assessments like the MCA, what are those formative assessments in the classroom, how do we really use that data in a meaningful way, and ensuring that we're balancing those assessment types, that we're not too heavy in one direction, and that teachers really feel supported in how they use that data. So we are currently developing what our current assessments are, and then we will in November be getting feedback from staff on those assessments during some professional learning time we have, where they'll be thinking about what are our, how do I use this to really respond in real time to the needs that I have of my students? Do I see any gaps in the assessments? Do I need different things? So we really want staff input and feedback throughout this process, but especially around that assessment piece. So we will be coming to you throughout the year to update you on these 3 priorities. And then we also have a social emotional learning team in the district. So if you are on the SEL team, will you stand in the back of the room? I know some of you are here. Thank you. So some of our principals also serve on that district-wide SEL team. And their work has been focused on really doing that understanding by design process, that evidence-based curriculum mapping process of creating learning targets from the Minnesota social emotional learning competencies, thinking about what are those priority standards, then building assessments with that, and then starting to look into that work of that Tier 1 instruction, where we'll be able to build in that and connect back to MTSS within that. And then the last thing I'll talk about is that equity work. I know I spoke to the board in June about the most recent recommendations that the Equity Task Force had. So I won't belabor these too much because I know you've been hearing us speak for a bit and probably could use a break from our voices. But these were the priorities that we had for that Equity Task Force that we will be continuing to work on through this next school year. And really, again, making sure that our community is a welcoming place for all students and that all students really have that sense of belonging and inclusivity. And with that, I will turn it back to Mr. Murtha.
What we're hoping you see here is the attempt at bringing coherence to the system. That there are lots of moving parts, whether it's PLCs, Equity Task Force, curriculum, CIP retreat, whether it's peer coaching, peer mentoring, all the different structures of the district. We are trying to align the arrows so we're all pointing in the same direction and getting us to those fixed unmoving points on the horizon that indicate appropriate student achievement and appropriate student growth and maximizing those. So we're trying to pull all those strings together. I love the braided rope analogy because it really does bring it together, and a braided rope is certainly much stronger than a piece of twine. So we're going in the right direction. And that leads us to the end of Part 1. I'll leave it to you to expect whether Part 2 is longer or not in October.
There's a lot of good information there, much needed by all of us. So does anyone have questions for?
Maybe just context for us. When I see the drop, like the 80% to 62%, and, there's kind of a collective gasp in the room.
Mm-hmm.
What is that really? I mean, are educators looking at that and saying, we got this, no big deal? Or are they looking at it and saying, this is going to be a big challenge?
It's going to be the latter. It's going to be the latter. Obviously, it's a big challenge because we know that when learning gets interrupted, it is extremely hard to recoup that. Pre-pandemic, we would have talked about a student who doesn't make consistent years of adequate growth is extremely likely not to graduate on time, not to be proficient, not to attend post-secondary educational career options. There's nothing new to that. So when your proficiency or your achievement rate or your proficiency rate falls significantly, that test gets exponentially harder. It's as if you have a building and the top floor breaks and falls, lands on the next floor down. That floor is now carrying a greater weight. And it breaks and it falls. That's a cascade failure in your structure. That's what's at risk, is if we are not able to return to the prior pandemic levels of success as quickly as possible, we're going to not service a generation of kids that absolutely have to be serviced. And I believe we will. We've already started, as the data has indicated, it's moving in the right direction. Do I want to snap my fingers and say it's all over and we're all back to normal? That would be disingenuous, and it certainly would not be courageous. We have to take this head on. We have some big challenges ahead of this. But the answers are clear to us. Consistent, high-quality core instruction. Identified means of responding to student data to ensure that they get the support they need, whether it's academic, social, emotional, personal. We have food shelves in our schools for a reason. That's a response to data. We have academic interventions. We have social emotional events. Again, we got to bring this all together to bear to do that. And if we do that, we will succeed.
Is there a historical precedent that we can kind of look at, that would kind of liken it? I mean, I think about like the stock market as a reasonable comparison, right? It tends to take the elevator down and the stairs back up. So would we say sort of the same thing happened when COVID came, that it was a fairly precipitous drop, and that that a reasonable expectation would be progress? Like,
there are lots of analogies you can use here. That's a very good one. You could be at 3rd and 2 and get sacked, and it's now 4th and 10. If you want to do it in a sports analogy, we gave up ground.
What I'm trying to get at is, as you're looking at CIP and some of the other things that you're doing, is 85% really what we're looking at, or is progress what we're looking at, or is it some blend of those?
It's got to be a blend. We have to be realistic, but we also can't undersell the urgency. Let's remember that each is each. And that's an important word for us. I'm not going to sit across the table and tell Mom, well, your kid's not proficient, and we're not going to do anything more because we're 93% proficient. If we were 93% proficient, we're in the Hall of Fame in this state. But that each matters. So you can't throw out 100% because no one's going to believe you can get to it. You have to set goals that are achievable, reasonably achievable, but you got to play this game with a tremendous sense of urgency. And you got to push unbelievably bloody hard to ensure that we're not leaving anyone behind.
And I guess that gets to the crux of what I was trying to get to, which is
it's a blend.
The state comes out with a stat, or a target is what I should say, right? This district had no hand in setting what that target is, that magical number of 85%, right? Which is a number, by the way, on certain slides that you were showing, we were never achieving.
Correct, but
going back to 17.
I can drill back a little bit further, and we did. I've been in education for 33 years. I remember education before the basic skills test of 1998. I remember what it was like prior to No Child Left Behind, which became ESSA and whatever alphabet soup afterwards. Setting a goal matters because you have to have a fixed target. We have to worry less about the goal, though, because that's a direction. Then how big's our paddle? How strong are we at the oar? What are the actions we're taking in the here and now to reach that target? You need both But our number one attentiveness has to be at how are we responding to the immediate needs of students with our instruction and our assessment, PLC level. Eventually, the MCA stuff will take care of itself if we're making the right responsive choices to student needs at the granular level in the classroom.
Which I 100% agree with. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that if you're sitting out there in the Brainerd community and you're fixated on this 85% number, that's the wrong ball to have your eye on.
I ask people to be aware, but not fixated.
Yeah, that is the only point I was really trying to make, is that there are other metrics in play, benchmarks that we're trying to hit, and to look at where we are against those benchmarks with that target in mind, and where we're tracking against people around the state or districts around the state in like comparisons. Fair enough?
It helps to compare against other districts, but in the end, we got to compare ourselves to ourselves.
Well, the aggregate state, right, not district by district, is what I'm saying, is you're looking at it, you're benchmarking against what the state is when you were looking at third grade math and eighth grade math and whatever.
When I look at what another district is doing, performance-wise, what I'm really asking is not a performance question, it's an action question. What'd you do to get that? Or what didn't you do to get that? That's the question we would try to ask in a comparison against like districts.
Right, but even today, with the MCA data we have today, we're performing pretty well against overall state data in most cases, right?
Most of our MCA achievement tests, we outperform the state. There is at least one where we're 0.1 underneath.
Fine, but as a general rule, that's all, again, that's all I was trying to get at, is there are multiple data points, and I don't want people out there getting fixated on one thing.
I will come back to this with the student achievement data in October. One of the things you're going to see is we need to attack the issue of consecutive years of growth, which we're making progress on prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic blew up in epic ways. What we see happening to us is our outperformance of the state at the elementary level is very high. Our lead over the state in the middle school closes. We still outperform the state. And then at the secondary level, at the high school level, we are at state average. Slightly above a little, slightly below in others. So that means that there's an interval of time in that function where the slope of improvement is higher for the state than for us. That's what we have to address. And that's why we need the MTSS system. And that's a historic challenge for us. It was present beforehand. We thought we were making inroads on it. We thought we were really ready to turn a real positive corner. And in the end, okay, we're starting over. All right, sometimes you lose yardage. We will gain it back, but it will be hard.
Tim, I think your response, the sense of urgency is critical. I think the data point it's immaterial because we're looking at every student, and progress is not good enough because once these kids go to the next level and they eventually graduate, we never get that opportunity to get them where they need to be.
Correct.
So it's that sense of urgency on every student. Forget about the state. I've always been critical. I don't care what the state goal is.
I'm required by law to.
Yeah, I know you. I know you. But every student matters. Progress isn't good enough because we don't get them back. We've got that sense of urgency, and that'll never go away. That's why that real-time data is so critical.
I completely agree. And with the leadership team that's in place and with the quality building leaders that are behind me, that urgency is here.
Yeah.
Thank you. You've been very patient.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next up, we're on to recognitions, and first it's the start of the new school year, and we want to welcome all parents and families and students back. It was a great first week. I know I was at Riverside, and other than the buses being a little late because of road construction all over the place, everything went really well. The kids had happy faces, a few sad parents, but the kids are all happy. So I just thank you, principals and teachers, for being here, and let's keep it going. Would you like to add anything else, Superintendent Hahn?
I will my report out, but I agree. It was a fantastic start with some unpredictable road construction and things that they thought would be done that aren't done, that continue to be delayed. And Reichert's and And our transportation office has responded very well, and parents have been patient, because it's led to some rerouting.
One thing that I've appreciated about the first few days or week is I have children at Forest View and also at the high school, and it's been really enjoyable to see and even to talk to my children as they notice how the district or how the school district responds to things that might not have been perfect on the first day in terms of drop off or other areas, but to see the school be so quick to respond. Especially when it comes to that drop off and making sure kids get to where they need to be quickly and efficiently and safely. So that's been a lot of fun to see up close and personal.
Well, the high school, had a whole new process, right? So.
Yeah, now they have a rock star person out there that keeps me in line when I park.
Wonderful. And our next recognition, I'm going to invite John Erickson to come up to talk about Title IX and Portraits 2022.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. I want to go back a long ways. I'm after all the archivist, and that means history. And I promise not to go through every one of the years since 1873, when Brainerd Public Schools basically started. That's 150 years ago for people who are math-oriented. But I need to get back there because what I'm talking about here tonight briefly is history, and history happening that's real life in this public school system. We started in 1873, and by 1884, we had the first Washington High School on this site here. It burned down in 1928. But before it burned down, we had a girls' basketball team playing intercity basketball, meaning with other schools and other towns nearby, Crosby and Little Falls principally. The evidence that we have is that the team was playing organized basketball, uniforms, the whole thing. Interesting to look at the pictures of those uniforms. In 1901, over 120 years ago. Think about that. Out of the 150 years of history in the school district, we had girls basketball 120 years ago. It went on for about 2 years, 3 years at most, and then it stopped, and I can't tell you why. It started again in 1923. Again, uniforms. They were very active and they were playing intercity, other schools. It went on during the flapper area of the 1920s, so girls, women are changing hairstyles, they're dressing differently. It's a time of somewhat aggressive female behavior, and that's reflected in some of the pictures that are in the exhibit back here. The 1885 Washington High School burned down in February 1928. There was a basketball team, girls' basketball team, up through that time. When it burned down, this building that we're in today, this room that we're in today, arose in 1929. It was built very quickly. This huge, massive building was built in a very short period of time. During the time that there was no gym in the high school, which there was in the old high school, the 1885 high school, the boys' basketball team found places to practice, one of them being the YMCA. The girls had trouble finding a place to practice. When they came back to school here, in about 1929, the girls' basketball team asked to start again, asked to have an inter-school competition schedule of sorts. There were representatives who came from that basketball team, one of them being the aunt of Rick Nolan, who all of you know. Her name was Kate. Kay. She and a coach from the team before, the 1928 team, asked the Board of Education to authorize the girls' basketball team to start again. And the answer was no. No, because it's imprudent for girls to play inter-school, between schools basketball. It was not approved on social, cultural issues of the day. What we have in the exhibit behind me, and I can see them on the screen, it's the top row back there. There are 6 library shelving units. Those are units from the 1929 building, by the way, which depict the teams involved in the story I've just told you through 1930. And so it begins with the 1901 girls playing, and it ends with the 1928 team, the last team. There was no inter-school girls basketball in Brainerd after 1930 for approximately 38 years. And then it began again, just before Title IX. Title IX, however, is what the exhibit is called, Title IX, Portraits 2022, because it's intended to be storytelling, telling history through stories about girls basketball as an example. It's the first section of 2 sections of Title IX storytelling. The second section is what happens after 1930. Where did we go after that? Because now we have great girls basketball, and they're learning everything that goes with competitive sports. I asked 4 members of our community to sit for portraits and to tell their life experiences with Title IX. These are members of the community. They're not necessarily graduates of Brainerd High School. That's the part of the second time around, which we'll do at the beginning of the year. And with us tonight are 2 of the women who sat for the photographs and gave me their stories, their Title IX stories. Sally Eney, Sally is behind me, wave your hand, Sally, who is the President Emeritus of CLC, better be good now, Charles. Sally definitely will read you out if you're not. Also with us is Sherry Delahunt, and Sherry also is an outspoken person. Sherry, raise your hand. She also sat for the interviewing and provided me with background material to write about their Title IX experiences. And they're included on the boards in the back of the boardroom here. The point, I think, there are 2 others who are not able to be here tonight. One is Kim Ellingson, who is familiar with all of you, president of Bremer Bank. And that's not just the local Bremer Bank. She's the president of a banking region. Important point. And lastly, Pastor Patricia Bjorklund, who is the senior pastor at First Lutheran in Brainerd, but also of interest, before she came here, she was on the Board of Education in the South St. Paul School District. Beware. These women have told some fascinating stories about Title IX, and they're reflected in the exhibit back there. So I guess the point here is that history can tell interesting stories, but in doing so can also educate all of us. And think about what happened in 29/19/30 to those women, those girls who were told, no, it's inappropriate for you to play inter-school basketball. We'll tell you more about this later on. There'll be a better ending to this story than what I'm telling you tonight. Thank you for allowing the boardroom to be used for this purpose. I hope you take some time to read through the storytelling of each of these women and look closely at those pictures, particularly the pictures of the girls who were on teams in the 1920s. They're staring right at you today in those pictures. Look at them carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as an addition to that, so tomorrow, September 13th, the district is offering free athletic passes for Brainerd students for the day. Events for the day include girls tennis at 2, girls swimming and diving at 6, and both girls soccer and volleyball at 7. So all students are invited
It's a fun night to kick
to
off.
join in. Yeah. Thank you, John. Next up, we have public input. Doug Kern.
I'll try to talk fast. Good evening. You know, we saw the slides with the that Tim Murtha put up with the sex, race, male, female thing. And one thing that I learned years ago is that scientific notation or doing testing criteria, you have to have the same number of subjects to get a accurate percentage. I don't know, somebody's gonna have to explain that to me because it doesn't make sense how you could have a small number of people here and a large number here and your percentages are gonna be skewed. Anyway, that's I'll have to ask Tim about that. So one of the things that was said was that we should emphasize what adults know and what are able to do to support the learning of each student. As we speak, the Public Education Licensing Standard Board, PELS, it's called PELS, they have a comment period that's going to end tomorrow at 4:30. And what they are doing, this licensing standard board, is circumventing our House, Senate, and our governor, and they're having a judge decide whether or not we're going to allow our teaching standard to change. The standard is going to be pushing all of this equity stuff that we see. It's going to be pushing the gender bending, fluidity, everything, CRT, everything that I stand against. If you are for it or against it, I would highly, highly recommend getting on the Public Education Licensing Standard Board. An easy way to do that is to go to Child Protection League. You can see, scroll through Child Protection League on Facebook, on the web, and you can see how to get onto there to see the comment period. One of the things that it's for preschool all the way up, all licensure, all teachers will have to get their licensure. They will be tested on this stuff that they're pushing. They had a book called It's Perfectly Normal that went through the House 4 times, passed in the House 4 times because the House was controlled by the Democrats. That book was so pornographic that Eric Lucero, he wanted to show that, like I'm showing my clipboard. He wanted to show that to the audience, the adults in the room. It was too pornographic. They could not show that book at the Minnesota House, but we were going to use that they were pushing it for preschool all the way up to seniors. To me, that's appalling. So I would really, really, everybody watching here, there, wherever, to get on that PELBS website and make a comment. Because tomorrow at 4:30, they're done, and a judge is going to make the decision on the 14th. So he's going to weigh it out. But like I say, they are circumventing the law, which is appalling, but that's what they're doing. So there probably will be a lawsuit somewhere along the way to protect our teachers and to protect our children that don't agree with this. So thank you.
Thank you. Then I had one other one, but I think he had to leave. Bob Nystrom isn't here anymore, right? Okay. Okay, so now we're at the approval of minutes. A long time into our meeting to be at the approval of minutes.
I move to approve the regular school board meeting of August 8th.
Second?
First from Director Hagelin, a second from Director Boyles. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then our consent calendar.
Move to approve as presented?
A second?
First from Director Boyles, a second from Director Spear. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And now we're on to new business. Marcy Lord is going to come and talk about our tax levy.
A really riveting topic for 8 o'clock. Let's see it up here, just a second. This will work. So for the 2023 proposed tax levy, this is just the timeline. So the presentation is the shortened version of what's in your board packet. Both the presentation and the levy document are in there. That has a lot more detail in there. The first levy run was put out just last week on the 8th. So normally in the past, we've had the second board meeting and there's been a couple more runs, but with it being this early this year, we're gonna roll with the September 8th, and then on the school board, you guys will approve the maximum tonight. Mid-November, the county will mail the proposed tax statements, and then the December 12th meeting will be the public hearing where we actually have the final levy and certification. The 2023 proposed tax levy, it sets taxes payable in 2023, and then it's recognized in the 2024 school year, so 23-24. And this includes the 2020A bond issuance that's on the next item on the agenda. And the majority of the revenues are based on enrollment, so that's why I have emphasized the enrollment on here. Our projection model does have us continue to go down. If with the October 1 count we see an increase, with the revision we would update the enrollment projection model to reflect that. And the first column, I didn't mark this on there, is adjusted ADMs, and then the second column is adjusted pupil units. The levy by fund, so the majority of it is debt service, 63%, and it was about 56% last year. We are no longer levying for our OPEB debt service. We made that final payment, or we will be making that final payment, so that is no longer something we have to levy for. So we're going down to 3 funds, and then the remainder is the general fund, and then the community service fund is 2%. The levy by fund history, so the 5-year average is about 6.71%, and then you'll see tonight we're talking about 8.4, and then the 10-year average is 5. And the 2019 levy, the 19.42, that was the year that we passed the referendum for all our building projects. The general fund by category, so we're actually going to be down about 3.05% in the general fund, and that's because of projected enrollment going down. Kevin asked me the question of, so with this overall increase, will that help our deficit? And the answer is no. The primary increase is due to debt, so it's not going to help with that deficit number. And not only that, it is for future years. We don't have the budget yet for the year that we're actually levying for. We're unique compared to cities and counties who are levying for their next budget year. The community service fund is up 0.7%, minimal change on that one. And the debt service fund, as I said, is up 40.29% for debt payments, and then includes that 2022A issuance. And the one thing I do want to touch on is that issuance can be restructured. So this 8.4%, when you guys approve the maximum, that allows us to, any adjustments made until September 30th will be reflected in what we certify to the, or what we turn over to the county. And then if we would like to, in December, restructure that payment so that maybe this percent is, 5% or whatever, we can restructure those payments so that this number is whatever you guys would like. And then this is a summary of our outstanding debt service through 2044. We're starting to consolidate this. So I removed 2 and I did add the 2022A, and then next year we'll have the purple column will be deleted. So we're slimming down what we have for outstanding debt, which is kind of nice. The market values, so 2022 market values are not known yet. That'll come out in October, so that's another factor when we I work with Ellers, and one of the things they said was we want to know what that number is before we modify those debt payments as well. So that resolution that's in the board packet is just to say, yes, you can go out for the sale. We'll look at when and the structure of the debt payments as we know more with the levy. The market value is just based on the numbers from the county. The referendum market value, it excludes certain properties, the largest being agricultural and seasonal rec, and then that's used for referendum and equity levies. And then the taxable market value is broken down by classification to come up with this net tax capacity, and all of these are used throughout the levy when we're calculating revenues. So the administrative recommendation is to approve the maximum, which allows for changes between now and September 30th. And then in December, we cannot go above the limitations that we set at this meeting. However, we can go below, as I said. Are there any questions on that?
Any questions? Just a level set, right? The idea is to set it at the maximum tonight to give us maximum flexibility in case we need it for some unforeseen reason, but there's every probability that because of the debt servicing restructure that we can do once we have better numbers to work from for those that'll come in later between now and December, we have the ability to take that number down.
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly.
Very well said.
Yes.
Anything else? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve as presented.
Second.
First from Director Boyles, a second from Director Blacklands. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then you get to stay up here and talk about the bond.
So in 2018, we had the election and we issued bonds. And since then, there's been a statute change where we can actually issue additional funds to reach the difference between the par amount of the bonds and the amount that was approved by the voters. And that number was 2.6 million, which is what's in the resolution. And basically, we are hoping that we can use this to basically preload our capital plan. So there were some things that, as you know, when we were going through these projects, we had to reduce or scale back because we were set with an assigned budget. And we'd really like to tackle some of those projects with these funds, prioritize, and hopefully put some money back into our reserves for our buildings with LTFM and capital. Any questions on that?
Does anyone have any questions? I think you talked to most of us about this.
Yes.
Again, just one thing for benefit of people watching. No tax impact to people as a result of these additional bonds being issued. This was all part of the original referendum, and therefore there will be no tax impact to the community.
And thank you for pointing that out, because there is a graph in there that I had attached that shows that it will be within the $7. Thank you.
Okay, and this is a resolution. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as stated.
I'll second.
First from Director Spear, a second from Director Blacklands. Further discussion? We need a roll call.
Kevin Boyles?
Aye, yes.
Tom Haglund?
Yes.
Ruth Nelson?
Yes.
Sarah Spear?
Yes.
Charles Blacklands?
Yes.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution passed. Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you, Marcy.
Okay, and our final action item is to approve a temporary appointment of a temporary school board member that will fill the vacancy created by Jana Sjogren's resignation. And this appointment will be effective 30 days after we appoint it, so this person will only end up serving for one meeting.
They will serve
The
for the
November.
November meeting, and then our newly elected two-year seat candidates, who most of them introduced themselves tonight, they will be
beginning in December.
Sworn in December. So you're looking for an appointment for one board meeting in November.
So I would like to recommend that we we consider Bob Nystrom. I have spoken to him. He was here earlier. He's our most recent board member that has left the board, and he is willing to take that 1-month position. That would be my recommendation.
And the guidance given by MSBA, which we presented at the last board meeting, was really in the midst that we're in a general election and a special election where any of those interested in running for a board seat was to avoid any potential conflict of interest or bias. So the recommendation was to look for a previous board member.
That isn't running for the
That is
next.
not running for re-election or election, correct. So that aligns with MSBA guidance that they provided, given our very unique situation.
So you want a motion? I would move that we appoint Nystrom to serve this 1-month gap as a board member in November.
I'll second.
So we have a first from Director Director Hagelin, second from Director Blacklatz. Any further discussion?
No, I was thinking about this after, so we will, in November, still have 5.
In October.
Yeah, our next board meeting, we'll have 5 board, we're still, by statute, we can have that seat empty for
60
days.
If you're gonna go beyond 60 days, which we are, you're
Yeah,
required to
yeah.
appoint.
Right, but one of the first things we'll do in November is we'll approve the canvassing of the elections, right? And then we'll have 2 new board members.
In December.
In December.
But why couldn't they serve in November?
Because that election, I think, is after the
And
November.
they have 7 days, so there's a 7-day period as well. So it's all about following
Oh,
this,
it's a 7-day
it's a
period. I
7-day
forgot about
period,
that.
because we asked all those questions too.
Yeah, I forgot about the 7-day.
Then the thought was, well, you could just not appoint, but if you appoint, then you're not in compliance with the guidelines. So we're in this really, it took about 5, it was a lot
Yeah,
of
no,
work,
I-
discussions, and
Yeah.
so you are in a unique window of time.
Someone will have to give Bob the orientation again.
We'll have to go through phase 1 and phase 2 training.
He was here earlier, and I wanted him to stand up, but he had to leave, so. Okay, so we have a first from Director Hagel and a second from Director Blacklatz to appoint Bob Nystrom as their temporary school board member. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Great, and now we're on to informational. Superintendent Hahn is going to talk about the Brainerd Public Schools Foundation.
These will be super quick. The foundation board actually met today. They have announced their big event topic, or I don't know, the big event title for the year, Farm Fresh BPS. So they're going with that kind of theme, planting seeds of generosity. They're in the midst of planning and seeking out sponsorship. It's a huge event. They continue to raise significant amounts of funds for our scholarship funds and for our 4A grants. That's always the first Saturday in February. They're going to remain at the Woods. The Woods was a wonderful sponsor, and we were thankful to go back to that spot. They are also now issuing 2 grant cycles for the 4A grants. Normally we've done 1, so they're doing a fall and spring, which is a gift to our educational staff. In addition, they've partnered with kind of their campaign drive with our staff, and we partner with the United Way. Right now we have a very generous school staff. They continue to contribute. In the past, they've raised and donated over $135,000 to the foundation. So shout out to our educational staff that participate in that drive, supporting both our foundation and the United Way. So those are major efforts that they're working on right now.
Okay, wonderful. And our equity task force update?
Sure. Yeah, we met back on August 16th. We have another meeting tomorrow, actually. Covered some good ground at this last meeting, and it's really, with the addition of Dr. Burkhart to the team, has really kind of supercharged us. I mean, the other people were doing a great job, but she's really, kind of tightened our focus and given us a lot of direction on how to really begin to take larger strides. I think the last few meetings were really identifying what those strides should be, and now we're able to start doing that. And then for those that were paying attention to Director Murtha's presentation earlier, there was an equity slide in there that identified some of the future buckets that we plan to work on. As most people know, the vast majority of the equity task force work over the last number of months, probably encompassing most of the last year, was really around student safety and security. That work continues, but now we're going to try to weave in and sort of spill that over into some of those other buckets that are more broadly focused on issues like bullying and things like that. We also were able to welcome 3 new members to the task force at the last meeting, 2 members from the community and 1 district staff member. I think I have those numbers right.
That's correct.
And so really, that meeting was about welcoming those folks and kind of creating an open door situation where we could have open dialogue and get them kind of entrenched and oriented on how to interact with the group and empower them to add their voices to the chorus. And so that's it. It's kind of really tomorrow we'll continue that work where we're going to look at those additional buckets and start to look at how to get into student support services and how we can begin to make more recommendations to this body about how to further the work that we've begun over in that task force.
Great. Any questions? Thanks for being part of that task force. Business services report.
Back here. All right, so in your packet is the enrollment report, and it is as of September 12th, 6,014 K through 12. When we look at the trend data from last year, if we keep that consistent, we'd be at 5,914 at the end of the year, which would mean we'd be about plus 34 from budget. So we're going to remain hopeful that that's the trend. Heidi said, nope, we're going to grow, we're not going to lose. So we'll see how that goes in the following months.
Yeah. Okay. Everything looked really good except for the kindergarten class.
Yes, we were a lot lower than expected, but then we gained in other grades, which really helped us out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is the 12th grade, that number is correct?
That is, I mean, that includes BLC, all sites.
Mm-hmm.
And we can add, so I'll add a little bit to that. I've appreciated Sue, because one of the questions that comes up every time Marcy gives this report is where did they go and where are they coming from? And what's really exciting this year is we're starting to see a plus on where they're coming from rather than where they're going. So when you look at, there's a natural transition that occurs from people moving in, moving out. But from students that were enrolled at the end of last school year that didn't return this fall, we're looking at 202. And then when you look at where are they coming in from, we're actually 330 in. So what's nice about that 330 coming in is 124 of those are previously enrolled students that were in our system that are coming back. We have 77 students that have moved into our area from around the state of Minnesota, as well as 29 who've moved in from out of state. So one of the things when we start to look at enrollment data, we really need to start looking at ourselves more as a suburban district because we have lots of ins and outs that come in, significant portions of those being moving. When you look at not returning, half of those students either transferred within the state or moved out of state. So again, when you're looking at that net gain and net loss. So I'm very hopeful and it's been very exciting to see. And yes, the kindergarten class is a little bit smaller, but we have to remember the group that came in so large last year was also a group of students that waited a year to then enter kindergarten.
Yeah,
so we had some parents who made a very cognizant decision to kind of just pause with their youngsters, knowing it wasn't a compensatory grade to enter in. And so we saw that large bubble of kids come in last fall in that grade level. So.
And then the other item is just the financial report, and there's nothing really to note on there. So if there's any questions, I will take them.
Just one other thing I'd like to mention enrollment, and I just learned this at Riverside, is that they lost some kiddos there because of how expensive rent is in this area. They can't afford to live in Brainerd, which kind of shocked me, but kind of makes sense. We don't have much affordable housing in this area. So some families can't afford to live here.
There's a lot of rent that increased across our district. So.
Thank you.
Okay, next superintendent report.
Super exciting first week of school. So when I was looking, Fran, there she is. So I went for everybody to Fran, you get to stand up. So this is Fran Gensel. Fran, I don't know if you want to come up and give us a little background. So, oh, come on. You know, what makes great thing happen for our kids are the great staff that exist here. So our previous transportation director decided 2 weeks before school started, not that I'm going to give him a hard time publicly, but I will, to return back to kind of his hometown. So Norby did a wonderful job with us, but Staples called him back and he was traveling. So Fran has been with us, was with us for how many years before he went to Minnetonka?
15.
15 years. Minnetonka stole her because they heard throughout the state how great Fran was. But the gift was with Norby stepping down. Fran has an immense knowledge about our transportation system, our community. And when you look at all these curveballs that keep getting thrown at us with road closures and cones moving, and they say the road's open when it's not, and 300 kids are in this neighborhood, and now they trenched out a road. Fran has managed that very well, so we're very lucky and fortunate to welcome Fran as our new transportation manager. So thank you, Fran, for stepping up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just a little tidbit. I just got the number today, but we sent out 4,012 bus cards on August 9th, and we made about 758 additions and changes from that point to September 1. So we've been very busy in the transportation office, but we managed to get all those little feet to their proper buses and to school about a half an hour late. So, but they all made it safely home, and we're really proud of that, and we're really happy to be serving the community in that way.
We figured over what 1,500,000 to and from schools that happen in this district each year. So there's a lot of people taking good care of our kids. And a huge shout out to Reichert's. Our partner with Reichert's Bus Service has been significant. Elsie and Kevra have been gifts, so we're just very appreciative of them. First day of school was super exciting. There was lots of things happening in buildings. I think the energy that exists with our staff right now is incredible. I think we're hoping that last year we had finally made through things, and this year feels just really, really good. We didn't realize how hard the past has been, but we're so focused on the future. And like I said, I'm very optimistic about enrollment when we watch where families and students are coming from, but very concerned, as you talked about. Some of our families are not able to stay with us because of what's happening in our community. And then the other thing I'll notice, because I think parents are hearing it at home, if you're a middle school parent or a high school parent, I want to give a huge shout out to our staff when we talk about safety and security and making sure our students feel welcomed. There is a significant staff presence on the curb when you drop off your child to make sure you don't stay there, which is more of the parents piece that we have. But students have commented that, wow, staff are in the hallways and they're monitoring bathrooms and they're telling us to keep moving on and get on to our business and get to classes. So that's a huge shout out to staff. Our students need to know that there's staff that they can connect with, and that when you look at some of those unstructured areas, a shout out to all of our buildings and staff, but particularly the middle school and high school are working really hard. Some of our middle school students and high school students have complained about that. But if you hear that, it's a very good thing, because that was a concern that students had voiced last year about being able to have that support from our staff, and our staff have totally stepped up. So thank you to the administration and our teachers and our support staff that are working really hard. But I would say,
stick in there real quick. I think a thanks to the parents. I think I have a lot of touch points with high school teachers in particular, because my son's in high school, and the feedback we're getting a week and a half in, or a week in, is student civility and behavior is better than it was last year. So that is a village thing. Everybody is contributing to that. The staff probably, like you said, as much as anything, but that doesn't happen if it isn't supported at home.
we need it all throughout.
We desperately need that after last year, and it's just so good to see that. Like my own son, who has a tendency to get targeted from time to time, has not had anything even close to an issue thus far. So I'm personally pleased about that. Thank you.
That's a good point. I thank the parents for supporting that. I think they've been telling their kids that, yep, it's okay that the staff member's in the hallway. So we have a strong partnership and want to continue that. Thank you, Kevin. But that's all I have.
Okay, good. It was a fun first week of school. So, future meetings. Our next, let's see, talked about the free passes to all Brainerd students. Homecoming week is coming up. There's a lot of stuff on homecoming. Jersey Day, white on the 19th on Monday. Well, you can read these all. Adam Sandler Day. That's interesting. And then, let's see, we have the school board candidate forum, just to remind all those candidates out there, 6 p.m. at, is it Forest View?
Yep.
Yep, Forest View on September 20th. And are you gonna be at the chili cook-off?
I'm pretty sure it will be.
Okay, that's October 5th. And our next regular school board meeting is at 6 p.m. on October 10th. And the election canvassing and regular school board meeting will be November 14th. So good luck to all of you out there, and I think that's all. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
First from Director Blacklands, a second from Director Spear. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. We're adjourned.
Everyone.